Hey, I just wanted to make a video really quick. I saw this meme, I know, that said basically like if a snake, like a venomous snake, if it bites you, do you go and get the antidote and work on like healing yourself, or do you chase the snake around and ask it why it bit you, trying to figure out like why it did what it did? And I just it was in like a dating group or whatever as like a meme or whatever, but it got me thinking about like how that's really applicable to I think relationships with people with narcissistic personality disorder, because I think closure is something like a lot of normal people want, and maybe even the narcissist wants it. I don't know, but closure is like, it gives us that feeling of resolution after an issue, even if we don't like the solution. It still is just like this feeling of being finished. And it can be really hard to move on when we don't have closure, when we don't have that feeling of being finished, when it feels like it's all like still open and messy and not quite resolved. But at the same time, too, I know with my own experience with trying to get closure from a narcissist, it was really just like running around full of venom. And instead of getting the antidote, I just was dying trying to figure out why this happened to me. And so I really do empathize with people too that are like stuck there now, because I get why wanting closure and wanting to know why is like so super important. It feels like it's everything. It feels like if I just know why, then I won't be so hurt anymore. But the truth is, even when you figure out why, that hurt is still gonna be there. It still exists. It still happened. And yeah, sure, understanding may lessen the pain, but it's still going to exist. And so, upon coming to that realization myself, that no amount of understanding could undo what I'd been through, I kind of let go of my need for closure, and in a sense, that was my closure. Which is kind of funny. People don't really think about it like that, but giving up on closure is your sense of closure. And especially once you go no contact with a narcissist, you're gonna have to like grieve them in a way, and that is also something that can give you a sense of closure as well. Going through that grieving process with awareness, being able to call out like, oh my god, I'm in denial right now, or I'm angry, and like just keeping like a list of those different stages of grief and being like, okay, I'm gonna hit all these, and like having grace for yourself during it, going through a grieving process over the narcissist is your closure, because it's not about figuring out why they did what they did, because we may never know. Even if you get them to tell you, how do you know it's the truth? And that was something that ran across my mind as well. It's like, so say he actually gives me these answers as to why he hurt me or whatever. Um, it doesn't, I don't even know if it's gonna be the truth. So yeah, I think closure is important and necessary, but it's not necessarily always from understanding why or forgiveness even, which is I think a lot of where people think that like closure comes from. But closure can come from any sense of completion. That's why I say like allowing yourself to go through some kind of emotional process with awareness, so you understand that I'm going through this because this is the last thing this narcissist will ever do to me. The last thing they will ever do to me is I will have to grieve them, and that's it. And so once I got through that process, with awareness too, I think that is really key. I know I keep saying it, but I do think that's really key, because going through the grieving process without awareness is really scary and full of pain and messy, and you feel a little crazy, and you don't really, when you don't know what's going on, you're just like along for the ride, and there's like a hell of a lot of emotions on this ride of grief. And so when we can point it out to ourselves, I think it makes the ride a little more peaceful. It's still gonna be a heck of a ride, but you can know where you're at. You're not lost in the safari. You know the path, even if you've never taken it before, or even if it looks different this time. You still the God, what do they call it? The landmarks. I can't think today. I just woke up, so but yeah. So I read that little like meme that was like a parable from like a monk once said. um, and I just thought that it was really applicable to narcissistic personality disordered abuse that we go through. But you know, everyone wants closure, and people can be toxic too. And I think it's the same principle, really. But just my mind, of course, the glaring obviousness was for NPD abuse survivors, and so I personally know how much we want to know why sometimes. But I've also driven myself crazy trying to figure out. I put myself in really dangerous, like physically dangerous situations to try to figure out why, to try to empathize with someone who just was filling me with venom. I needed to go heal, and I'm glad that I eventually did try. Like start. I mean, I don't think I'm ever gonna say that I'm healed. I think I am in a constant state of healing. I would like to get to be no longer like severely traumatized, and I'd like to, have the label functioning. But I don't know if I would ever say I'm done healing, because I'm never done being hurt in life. And that's kind of like a sad way to look at it, but it just kind of is what it is. Life just goes on, and things keep happening, and they're good and they're bad, and so we're gonna have to heal from things throughout our whole lives. So the more we can build our tools and our self-awareness, I think the easier it becomes. So yeah, that was my little bit about closure. I hope that, if you find yourself in a situation where you're stuck, like, and you're hurting yourself trying to figure out why this person did this to you, maybe think about how else you could get closure. What else would be satisfying for you and feel like the final event of the relationship, and it doesn't have to involve them at all. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to fucking involve their lame ass in anything. It's all you. Closure is an internal process. It can be externally validated as well between two individuals or more, but generally the emotional, like, effect of closure, that's from within, because I've also gotten physical closure with people and I still didn't have that emotional closure. Like, everything we said, it didn't feel like good to me. It didn't feel like it should be the end, I guess. And so closure really is like an internal process that happens, if we want peace, because you can have all the physical closure, and sometimes that is helpful for the internal process, but not always. So I just wanted to point that out too. If you also find yourself being like, why don't I feel resolved, even though we said our goodbyes, we said the last things we wanted to say in like a calm way, and it seemed like we communicated effectively. Sometimes you can communicate effectively and you still just don't agree on things, and that doesn't make you feel resolved sometimes. But yeah, closure is just something we have to find on our own. Maybe going through the grieving process or something isn't what's going to give you closure. Maybe I'm trying to get creative here. Maybe closure for you looks like writing a story about it, or like painting a painting, or creating a song about it, or even just like an instrumental melodic piece that encompasses how you're feeling. Maybe closure is going to look like going back to a place you guys used to go all the time, but going alone, and being okay with it, and maybe you're not okay with it the first few times you go there, but you keep going until it's okay. And so, because closure, of course, I am talking about, it made me think of like, narcissistic abuse, but closure can also be really necessary when people like pass away and stuff like that. And so sometimes we'll drive ourselves crazy, like, why did this happen to them? What could I have done to prevent it? Like, who could have saved them? And we think that that'll give us closure too, but at the end of the day, that doesn't make the loss go away. And so maybe it'll give some people closure. There's something for everyone, but for me personally, I know that it did not give me closure to know how someone close to me died. It just brought up more questions and more what if thinking that was not rooted in reality. It was rooted in fantasy, and it didn't bring me peace. For me, closure with losing a very close friend looked like creating a jewelry piece with a bead from a necklace that they'd given me, and a shell that their best friend had found, who'd also passed away, and two of their birthstones. And finishing that piece kind of brought me this like sense of closure of like, I took elements of them and I've put them together forever. They were their best friends, and now they're both on the other side, and now I have a little piece of that. And but grief is also weird too, because sometimes you'll feel like you got closure and you went all the way through all the steps, and then it just hits you like a fucking wave a year later. Closure is funny like that. It's not always permanent either. If we learn new things about the situation, like that can undo our closure, at least in my experience. And so it's really, or it can threaten at least to undo our unclosure, undo our closure. Fuck, I can't talk. But yeah, so just because you reach closure 2 doesn't mean you never have to walk through that door again. Sometimes it's a door you walk through multiple times. But it's what we need to be seeking, not from chasing the snake and finding out why it bit us, but through our own healing, our own antidote. So yeah, I hope that you can find your antidote today that will bring you closure in whatever situation you may find yourself needing closure in, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. Have a good one, guys.